Let's get started with our first news. Islam Makhachev recently spoke with a Russian outlet, opening up about his future in both lightweight and welterweight. He explained that a move back down to 155 is possible, but only under the right circumstances. Islam said he is not a young fighter anymore, and every weight cut takes a serious toll on his health. Dropping back to lightweight is nothing like it used to be, and for him to drain himself again, the UFC would need to put something huge on the table. Without a major offer, he is staying at 170, where he feels stronger, healthier, and fully in control of his performances. When asked about a super fight with Ilia, Islam made it clear that a matchup at 155 is off the table unless the UFC truly delivers. He said that cutting all that weight just to face Ilia makes no sense unless the stakes are massive. At welterweight, though, he believes that fight could be something special down the road, depending on how the division develops. Speaking of welterweight, Islam said the title picture is finally beginning to clear. According to him, there are 3 or 4 real contenders for his next defense. Over the next 2 weeks, he expects the UFC to make a decision on who gets the shot. He emphasized that he's ready for anyone, and now it's simply a matter of the UFC choosing the direction they want to go. Islam also reacted to Garry's performance at UFC Qatar. He said Garry didn't surprise him personally, but if Garry impressed the UFC matchmakers, then there's a real chance he could be selected next. Islam explained that the UFC often looks at momentum, buzz, and timing, and if Garry checks those boxes, the promotion might move him into title contention sooner than expected. He then addressed Shavkat Rakhmonov's situation. Islam pointed out that Shavkat has been out for more than a year, which makes it difficult to justify giving him a title shot. Long layoffs, especially due to injuries, usually slow a fighter's momentum. Still, Islam made it clear that if Shavkat recovers and the UFC picks him, he has no problem accepting that fight. For Islam, the priority is staying active, defending his belt, and facing whoever steps up next with the most legitimacy behind their name. Move on to another news. Nate Diaz is making headlines again after giving his unfiltered take on Islam Makhachev's pound-for-pound status. During a recent appearance on Neon's livestream, Diaz sat alongside Jake Shields, and when the conversation shifted toward the UFC's top pound-for-pound fighter, he didn't hold back. Even though Islam officially holds the UFC's #1 P4P spot, Diaz insisted he doesn't deserve it, arguing that Islam hasn't been in the game long enough and hasn't beaten anyone that truly solidifies him as the best. Diaz went on to call Islam a boring fighter and said Ilia is a more complete athlete overall. As the discussion continued, Diaz and Shields were asked to name who they personally consider the best pound-for-pound fighter in the UFC right now. Diaz immediately mentioned Jon Jones, calling him a true OG legend, someone who has done everything, fought everyone, and stood the test of time. Shields agreed, reinforcing Jones' legacy as one of the most dominant forces the sport has ever seen. When Islam's name came up again, Diaz doubled down. He claimed the UFC is quick to throw certain names into the spotlight, even if they haven't earned it through longevity or stacked resumes. In Diaz's eyes, Islam has only been at the top level for like 2 minutes and hasn't beaten anybody that great to justify the hype. He said there's a big difference between what Islam has accomplished and what past lightweight legends like BJ Penn did in their primes. Diaz pointed out how BJ beat fighters like Matt Hughes and went to war with GSP, proving himself over extended periods, night after night, in the toughest eras. Diaz admitted that Islam might become that level of fighter someday, but emphasized that he is not there right now. According to him, people act like he's already achieved legendary status, but Diaz believes the resume simply doesn't match the praise. He said that just because Islam is winning fights doesn't mean you suddenly elevate him above true long-term greats. He also added that people accuse him of hating, but he insists his opinion has nothing to do with personal differences. Diaz said he's simply speaking from what he has seen inside the cage. From his perspective, Islam's recent performances weren't memorable, and he personally found them boring. Diaz finished by saying that the name Islam Makhachev shouldn't even be mentioned alongside fighters who have built legacy, longevity, and true dominance in the sport. Move on to another news. Conor has made a dramatic return to the spotlight after revealing he underwent an intense psychedelic healing treatment in Mexico. Posting on X, he told fans, "Hey guys, I am back," and explained that he had been working with what he described as some of the most forward-thinking doctors from Stanford University. According to Conor, these specialists guided him through a series of treatments designed to address deep trauma he had been carrying for years. He traveled to Tijuana, Mexico, where he underwent an ibogaine treatment at a place called Ambio, the same facility featured in the newly released Netflix documentary In Waves and War. Conor described the experience as incredible, overwhelming, and absolutely life-changing. He said the treatment showed him visions of what would have been his own death, how close it supposedly was, and how devastating it would have been for his children. He explained that he saw himself from above, watching the moment unfold, then saw the world from inside a coffin. That's when, according to him, everything shifted. He said God appeared to him in the form of the Holy Trinity, Jesus, Mary, the archangels, all present. He described heaven with vivid detail, saying he saw white marble steps and watched Jesus descend before placing a crown on his head. In that moment, Conor said he felt saved, with his brain, heart, and soul completely healed. The experience lasted a staggering 36 hours before he finally slept. When he woke up, he said he felt like himself again for the first time in a long time. He called it the most enlightening and enchanting experience he has ever gone through, stressing that while it was extremely tough, it absolutely saved his life, and in turn, saved his family. Conor thanked everyone who sent him inspiration, motivation, encouragement, support, and prayers, saying all of it mattered and all of it worked. He said he feels like his childlike self again, but this time with the wisdom of adulthood guiding him. He delivered a heartfelt message to his family, friends, fans, supporters, and his team, saying, "Baby, we did it. The world is in for a treat." He ended his message with emotional gratitude toward God, saying he now lives his life according to God's word, with nothing taking priority over that. He signed off simply as, "Your great-grandson, Conor." Move on to another news. Khamzat has fired off a fresh threat toward Garry after their heated backstage incident at UFC Qatar, and the tension between them continues to rise. The confrontation began when Khamzat shoved Garry, claiming Garry had touched him in a disrespectful manner while passing by. Security stepped in quickly, but the situation left both men fired up and ready to escalate the feud beyond a simple misunderstanding. What happened backstage didn't stay backstage for long, as the drama carried over into the post-fight press conferences, where both fighters addressed the altercation in their own way. According to Khamzat, Garry crossed a line, and he made it clear that disrespect would not be tolerated. Garry, on the other hand, insisted that Khamzat overreacted and that nothing he did warranted that kind of response. But it seems Khamzat was far from satisfied with how things ended in Qatar. A now-deleted post, reshared by Championship Rounds on X, showed that Khamzat continued the feud online, sending a direct and intense message to Garry. In that post, he wrote, "White boy, you will not survive 1 minute in my," before the rest of the message was cut off in the screenshot. Even without the full sentence, the intention behind the statement was crystal clear. Khamzat wanted Garry to know that if things ever got physical inside the cage, he believes the fight would be brutally one-sided. This new threat added more fuel to an already volatile situation. Khamzat, known for his aggression, intensity, and willingness to fight anyone at any time, is not someone to take lightly. His history of confrontations, his dominant performances, and his fearless attitude only amplify the weight of his words. Garry, however, hasn't stepped back. He has shown confidence every time the situation has been brought up, calling Khamzat's behavior unnecessary and saying he has no fear of facing him in the future. The entire MMA community is now watching closely as this feud continues to grow. What started as a quick physical exchange backstage has turned into something far bigger, something personal, something that fans can already imagine turning into a high-stakes showdown inside the octagon. The dynamic is explosive. Khamzat's raw power and intensity against Garry's confidence and rising momentum in the division. Both men have big personalities, loud voices, and a desire to prove they belong at the top. If the UFC chooses to capitalize on this tension, this could easily become one of the most anticipated matchups of the year. For now, though, the war of words continues, and Khamzat's latest message makes one thing absolutely clear. The rivalry is not cooling down. It's getting hotter. Move on to another news. Max Holloway recently opened up about why he isn't rushing to be part of the historic White House UFC event, despite the hype surrounding it. While the idea of fighting there is massive, and the spotlight would be insane, Max made it clear that one thing matters more than any stage: his family. The event will only allow around 5,000 people in attendance, and for Max, that means his family might not even get seats. Emotionally, that's a deal breaker. He explained that after working so hard to climb to the top of the UFC, he's used to having his loved ones ringside, witnessing every moment with him. Not having them there would take away from the experience, no matter how historic the event is. That said, Max isn't completely opposed. He said he would still fight at the White House if the UFC asked, because it's a huge moment for the sport. However, he made it clear that he's not losing his mind over it like others might. Family comes first, and nothing overshadows that principle for him. Max is coming off a huge win over Dustin Poirier and is already focused on a potential rematch with Charles Oliveira. He believes the winner of that fight will get pushed right back toward a lightweight title shot, keeping the division moving at a rapid pace. On the champion side, things are heating up as well. A matchup between Ilia and Arman is suddenly looking much more realistic than it did just a few weeks ago. Arman recently picked up another win, and if Ilia returns in February as expected, many fans are already seeing Arman as the clear #1 contender for Ilia's belt. The timing aligns perfectly, setting up an exciting start to the year. Max discussed the logistics of the White House event, noting that the limited audience makes it difficult for him to fully embrace it. He said, "There's no American champion. The only American champion he is the BMF title. So, am I going to be at the card? I like my odds, but with only 5,000 people, I don't know if my family would have seats. At the end of the day, it kind of sucks not having family there, especially after all the work I've put in." Looking ahead, Max said his priority is recovering from his injury and getting back in the octagon early in the year, ideally around March or April. He also shared thoughts on recent welterweight and lightweight fights, including Arman's win over Dan Hooker at UFC Qatar, and Ian Garry's victory over Belal Muhammad, which shook up the welterweight title picture. Max acknowledged the potential excitement of Garry facing Islam Makhachev down the line, keeping fans speculating about the next big matchups in the UFC. Move on to another news. Robert Whittaker has stepped in to defend Khamzat and Islam Makhachev after both faced criticism for what fans called boring championship performances. Despite dominating their respective fights from start to finish, the lack of a stoppage led much of the MMA community to dismiss their wins. On the latest episode of his podcast, Whittaker pushed back hard against that narrative, emphasizing just how impressive their performances really were. He said, "People have no idea how impressive it actually is to dominate another world-class fighter like that for almost 25 minutes. When you're fighting champions or elite contenders at the very top, shutting them down everywhere is insanely difficult, and doing it in back-to-back rounds is even crazier." Whittaker highlighted that fans often overlook the level of skill required to maintain that kind of control. He explained that the ability to hold someone down at championship level is extremely rare and something UFC fans don't get to see often. If you go in there like Khamzat did, like Islam did, and hold the champion down for 20 or 23 minutes, that is so rare. You don't see that. The UFC hasn't seen that across its history. It is wild, he said. He also pointed out how the intricacies of their grappling performances are incredible, noting that their fights could even be studied as tutorials because of the attention to detail in every move and transition. Whittaker added a humorous but pointed perspective about why these performances are so impressive. He said, "What do we got to do in the street to hold a guy down? Like, if you're in a street fight and some dude hops on top of you and humps your head for 25 minutes, bro, you lost." His point was clear. Controlling an opponent at that level requires a combination of skill, endurance, and strategy that casual fans often fail to appreciate. As for what's next, Khamzat is expected to return sometime after April 2026 in a massive middleweight clash with Nasurin Imamov. Islam, now the first Russian two-division champion, is waiting on his next move. It could be a fight with Ilia or one of the top welterweight contenders like Garry or Kamaru Usman, depending on how the division unfolds. Whittaker's defense underlines the reality that dominance at the highest level of MMA is not always about flashy knockouts or finishes. Sometimes, the most impressive performances are the ones that showcase control, technique, and consistency over time, proving that mastery of the craft is just as thrilling and far more difficult than a single highlight reel moment. Both Khamzat and Islam demonstrated that mastery in their title fights, and Whittaker made it clear that their accomplishments deserve respect, not criticism. Move on to another news. Let's get started with what's next for Arman following his impressive UFC win. After a dominant performance, Arman has officially put himself back in the spotlight and is now calling for a fight with Ilia. Despite Ilia previously shooting down the idea of facing Arman next, it's becoming increasingly difficult for him to ignore the rising contender after Arman's latest display. Fans and analysts alike are now speculating that the matchup is closer to happening than ever, especially after the way Arman handled his most recent opponent. Not only did Arman extend his winning streak to 5, but he also demonstrated complete control throughout his fight against Dan Hooker. From the opening moments, Arman came out pressuring Hooker, landing hard punches and threatening with repeated takedown attempts. He showcased his versatility, switching seamlessly between striking and grappling, keeping Hooker guessing and unable to establish any momentum. The fight's turning point came during the final grappling exchange, where Arman skillfully maneuvered into an arm triangle choke. Hooker had no choice but to submit, giving Arman a decisive and emphatic victory. Following the win, Arman wasted little time in his post-fight interview, making it clear that he is ready for Ilia. He stated that he would be good to go as early as January if needed, signaling his readiness and eagerness to challenge the top contender. His confidence is backed by his recent performance, where he not only dominated a seasoned opponent, but also demonstrated strategic awareness, endurance, and finishing ability. The combination of his winning streak and his dominant performances makes him a serious threat to anyone in the division. The big question now revolves around matchmaking and timing. With Arman calling for Ilia and the UFC needing to balance title contention with marketability, fans are left anticipating what the promotion will do next. Arman's win over Hooker has certainly made a statement. He is a serious contender, and his trajectory is pointing straight toward the top of the lightweight division. For now, the MMA world will be watching closely as negotiations and plans unfold. Arman has proven he can handle pressure, dominate elite competition, and finish fights when it counts. Whether the UFC schedules him against Ilia early in the year or waits for the right moment, one thing is clear. Arman is ready for any challenge and will not shy away from the opportunity to cement his place among the division's elite fighters. Fans can expect action, intensity, and high-level competition when this matchup finally comes to fruition.